April 8, 1943, 27,000 feet above Caen, France. Through the crystal canopy of his Focke-Wulf 190A5, Oberleutnant Ralf Hermashin grinned behind his oxygen mask. Below him, clumsy silver dots were dragging themselves upward through the sky, America's new fighters making their first appearance over occupied Europe. "The enemy has sent us flying milk bottles," he joked over the radio, his wingmen laughing in return. 16 Republic P-47C Thunderbolts were clawing toward altitude, their 2,000 horsepower Pratt and Whitney R2800 double Wasp engines roaring in protest against the 7-ton airframes. To German eyes accustomed to the sleek Focke-Wulfs and agile Messerschmitts, the Americans' bulky machines looked ridiculous. Round fuselages like beer barrels, tiny wings, and propellers that seemed far too large. What Hermashin and his squadron did not know, what no German pilot in that sky could have guessed, was that those milk bottles would soon become the most feared predators in Europe's airspace. Within 18 months, the Thunderbolt's 8.5 caliber Browning machine guns would write the obituary of the Luftwaffe's fighter arm, transforming derision into terror.
A weapon born from panic. The P-47 story began not in triumph, but in desperation. In June 1940, as German forces crushed France, Alexander Kartveli, the Georgian-born chief designer at Republic Aviation, received urgent instructions from the U.S. Army Air Corps. Build a high-altitude interceptor that could challenge the Luftwaffe. Kartveli's design defied every convention. It will be a dinosaur, he told his engineers, but a dinosaur with good proportions. When the prototype XP-47B first took flight on May 6, 1941, observers were stunned. Weighing nearly 10,000 pounds empty, it was 65% heavier than its predecessor, the P-43 Lancer. Massive turbo-supercharger ducts snaked through its fuselage, giving it a swollen look. Pilots joked that it looked pregnant. But it flew, and at altitude, nothing else could touch it. The double Wasp engine and 18-cylinder radio maintained full power at 27,000 feet thanks to its turbo-supercharger. While German engines gasped for oxygen, the Thunderbolt breathed freely in the stratosphere. The beast that killed its own pilots. The P-47's early reputation, however, was brutal. At Bridgeport, Connecticut, Major Hubert H. Zemke's 56th Fighter Group lost 18 pilots and 41 aircraft before even reaching combat. The Thunderbolt could flip over on takeoff, skid off runways, or dive so fast that the controls froze solid. Zemke's men began calling it the Jug, short for Juggernaut. But those who mastered it discovered a monster unlike anything in the sky. Quote, "It was like strapping yourself to a locomotive," recalled Lieutenant Robert Johnson, a young Oklahoman farm boy who would become one of America's top aces. You didn't fly it, you aimed it. The first battles. When the Thunderbolt first entered combat in April 1943, the Luftwaffe was unimpressed. The P-47 couldn't climb like a Bf-109, couldn't turn with an FW-190, and seemed to lumber through the air like a truck with wings. "It flies like a pregnant cow," sneered Josef Pips Priller, commander of Jagdgeschwadron 26. "Our boys call them the Flying Barns." In the first month, the Americans lost 14 Thunderbolts for just 3 confirmed kills. British RAF pilots observing from their Spitfires quipped that the best way to dodge in a P-47 was to get out and run around the cockpit. But there was one thing the Germans failed to notice. The Thunderbolts that went down took extraordinary punishment before falling. One P-47 limped home with 21 cannon holes and more than 100 bullet strikes, still flying. Its air-cooled radial engine shrugged off damage that would have instantly killed any liquid-cooled fighter. And when those 8 Brownings did find their mark, the results were devastating. The day the Luftwaffe stopped laughing. June 26, 1943, Lille, France. Lieutenant Robert S. Johnson of the 61st Fighter Squadron was returning from escort duty when his formation was ambushed by 16 Focke-Wulf 190s. His P-47 was hit repeatedly. 20mm shells shredded his canopy, tore off engine panels, and sprayed hydraulic fluid into the cockpit. Wounded and half-blind, Johnson tried to bail out, but the canopy was jammed shut by a shell impact. He was trapped. Moments later, a lone German fighter lined up behind him and opened fire, again and again. The Thunderbolt absorbed the full load of cannon shells and hundreds of machine gun rounds, yet it refused to die. When the German pilot finally pulled alongside, out of ammunition, he stared in disbelief. Johnson looked back through his blood-smeared goggles. The enemy gave a small salute and turned away.
Learning to fight the Thunderbolt way. By mid-1943, American pilots began to understand their aircraft's secret. It was not built for dogfighting, it was built for dominance. Zemke taught his men a new philosophy, quote, "Don't turn with them, don't climb with them, dive on them, hit hard, get out," unquote. In a dive, the P-47 was untouchable. From 30,000 feet, it could exceed 550 miles per hour, faster than anything the Luftwaffe could follow. The Thunderbolt's enormous weight became a weapon. Momentum itself turned into armor and offense. Captain Walker Bud Mahurin perfected the boom and zoom attack: dive, strike, and climb away before the enemy could react. German pilots caught in the gun's convergence zone described it as flying into a altitude, America's secret weapon. By late 1943, the Luftwaffe began realizing a grim truth. The higher the fight went, the worse it got for them. At 30,000 feet, German engines suffocated. The P-47's turbocharged double Wasp still roared. Even ace Hans Philipp, credited with over 200 victories, fell victim to this imbalance on October 8, 1943, when his FW-190 disintegrated under Robert Johnson's fire. When his death was confirmed, shock rippled through German squadrons. If pilots like Philipp couldn't survive a Thunderbolt attack, what chance did anyone else have? Then, in January 1944, came the next evolution, the P-47 D-22, with its giant 13-foot paddle blade propeller. Suddenly, the fat American could climb almost as fast as it could dive. German ace Heinz Knoke noted in his diary, "The flying pigs have learned to climb. We tried to break away, and they followed us to 30,000 feet. Schmidt was caught and vanished in a flash. These are not the same machines we laughed at last year." The new propellers also gave the Thunderbolt a distinct voice, a deep rolling thunder that echoed for miles. German troops called it Donnerschlag, the thunderclap. When they heard it, they took cover.